So they don't put the finger up your bum anymore? You're listening to the Beat Motel podcast, and we need to warn you that we like to use words like fuck, shit, and syndicalist, scrotics, angry flap, and filth biscuits. And we don't often bleep those words out, apart from because we're not complete animals. But if you understand that and you like music, then listen on.
So, did someone's mum just come in when you were telling me about your prostate exam?
No, I thought somebody knocked on the door, and I have no idea what the people out there think of me when I'm in here, because the noises I make, either when recording podcasts or just like in networking meetings, and the squealing, and I have all these.
You don't want to know what happens when Andrew goes networking.
It's become like a running joke on one of the networking things that they ask me to do little performances, so I use like. So I've got all these things that make noises, and I squeal, and I don't grunt. I'm more of a squealer than a grunter.
Yeah, you always seem more into black metal than death metal. Yeah.
Now someone's coming in. Hello. There must just be somebody just learning to tap dance outside the office door or something. I seem more like a what? You seem more like a growler.
I'm more like a growler than a. You're more of a black metal fan than a death metal fan.
Yeah, absolutely. Hang on, I forgot to put the sign up. I've been really negligent the last few recordings, putting the Beat Motel sign up for the video. No, I was just telling you, I had my well man check, and yeah, they don't. I mean, I didn't like specifically clean up in preparation for it or anything, but I did walk into the room thinking they're going to put something up my bum, but they don't anymore. Apparently, it's all just questions, and go home and put things up your bum yourself.
Go to the hospital. How did the ferret get up there?
The ferret. And why did you shave it?
Why did you shave the ferret before you...
Friction, clearly. Oh God, no, let's change the subject. That's gone far worse than I thought it was.
Moving on lubricantly.
We've got a lot to cover today. I've got notes. Oh. The first time it's taken us. What is this? This must be our 89th episode or something.
This was a really interesting one to do. This is and this one I think probably is a bit close to home for you in some ways.
It's a weird one, but we'll explain. Yes, the 68th episode. It's taken me 68 episodes to actually consider making notes in preparation.
Oh, God. I've got some mental notes, but let's see if I remember them.
Well, let's start off with Riff of the Week. Here is your Riff of the Week.
He Virgo, ever so civilized while out on road. No play down the kids wise. Don't wanna get mixed up in they mix up. Wanna just fix up. Mind, soul, and mental plane. Join the ducks, plot in the plot. Knock in the knock, the witch, the where, the what. Tune maneuver, get in the gun. Stew chicken in the Dutch pot, running it hot. Join the ducks, plot in the plot. Knock in the knock, the witch, the where, the what. Tune maneuver, get in the gun.
Oh, I love a bit of this person. Who is it, Sam?
This is Roots Maneuver, and I've lost all my notes. I do have sort of notes. Roots Maneuver, Join the Dots, and it's from his second album, Awfully Deep. And I've been on a bit of a Roots Maneuver and Charlie Tuna, who was the guest artist, who is the Jurassic Park, one of the Jurassic Park rappers. He's the guy. Jurassic Park 5 rappers.
Jurassic. He's one of the rapping dinosaurs. Yeah,
he's one of the rapping dinosaurs, and he's the guy with the very deep voice. And
I really like.
He's so good. He's so good. He released an album. Actually, I found out he released an album last year. It's really, really good. But I just went. Yeah, I've got back into cycling because the Thor has got to that point in Helsinki. So I was putting together a playlist, and I put on Witness the Fitness, and then I just thought, listen to the whole album. And that track comes on after Witness the Fitness, and it is fucking brilliant. And and the riff, the backing riff is really cool. It's much more
bassline's awesome,
trad hip hop. It's much more sort of trad hip hop than I think Roots Maneuver normally has done. Witness the Fitness has got a really bizarre beat to it. And it's just a fucking great track. But the riff is actually really cool, and the chorus sort of high, is that a flute? The high thing is really like really cool, and the vocal refrain that he does for the chorus is really cool. It's just a fucking cracking track. So well done, Roots Maneuver. You're doing well.
Well done, Mr. Maneuver. He's an artist that I always mean to check out more of. He's very kind of Six Music popular. You know, he's sort of got this sort of, he occupies this strata of musician. Sorry, I'm really trying not to cough. This strata of musician that seems to make an all right living. Not like megastar, not struggling, just sort of comfortably. And whenever he talks, whenever he's on the radio being chatted, he just sounds like a decent bloke, basically. A good egg.
If you're into the sports, he's got a very cool football shirt with Adidas out at the moment.
Is he really?
Witness the fitness.
Now, I've been thinking about football shirts because we went to go.
It looks a bit like the Germany 1994 one, I think.
What, white
maybe
with?
90. Yeah. White
Welcome to Beat Motel, by the way.
we like talk sports. About football. We talk about.
If you like the kickball.
I like the sports.
I was thinking about football kits yesterday because on Wednesday night, myself and Mrs. Culture went to go and see Yard Act play at the UEA in Norwich, which is one of my all-time favourite venues. It's just such a great venue because like the whole dance floor is sort of sunken. I mean, it's huge, but the whole area in front of the stage is sunk quite deep. So if you have a vertically challenged wife, as I do, she can still pretty much see. And they put on a hell of a show. They really sort of ascended. It was just fantastic. I slightly regretted it when I had to get up really early to go do a work thing yesterday morning.
Well, that explains the pig noises, the squeals and the grunts.
Grunts and the squeals. But they sponsor an under 12s girls football team in a place called Kesgrave. Now, Kesgrave is like a suburb of Ipswich, and you've definitely cycled through it. But they were playing possibly at Latitude Festival, which is just up road from here.
Are they fairly local, then?
No, they're from Leeds. But I don't know how, but somehow they met or spoke to some girls from this football team, and the girls just said, "Would you sponsor our club?" And they said yes, and there is a little girls' football team in Suffolk with Yard Act football shirts, which I love. I think that is absolutely wonderful. That's so cool.
That's cultural capital beyond any of their peers.
What do you mean by cultural capital?
Oh, cultural capital is the concept by a French philosopher, where they sort of put together this idea that the things we wear and the things that we do have a cultural capital, so people sort of think of you in a certain way if they see you associated with certain things. So, there's the clearest way of explaining it to someone like you and I is if you're at a metal festival and you see someone with a T-shirt that you think is cool, that person has cultural capital.
That makes total sense. It has come up before, and you talked about it in your black metal episode.
Yeah.
So I was thinking about the football shirt thing because obviously people love football shirts. You know, people wear that's like a tribal thing. And I thought that football team, if they had an agreement with Yard Act to like sell Kesgrave under 12s FC Yard Act, they'd sell tons of Yard Act. A properly big band now, and I can only assume it came from the right place. All their lyrics they're incredibly politicized and very. They've got that sort of millennial. I shouldn't like group a whole generation together, but they've got the millennial we give a shit about what's happening to the world and what we're a part of attitude, right. Which is it's just really good. I mean, the lyrics are some quite challenging, but I'm going to play my riff of the week now, and it goes a little something like this. Hasn't actually got a riff in it, but mine really do.
They forgot that they got lost in a never-ending circle of death and loss.
Right. To give you an idea of how long that song is, that's kind of the middle 8, and it's at the 8-minute 16 point in the song. So that's a band called Slift, who I've been getting into recently, or kind of getting into, and I want to discuss this with you because I heard that track, which is the first track of their new album, and it's a band on Sub Pop. So they're sort of
cool.
They're not really sort of on a metal label, and they didn't start off as metal, it would appear. A French band. And the first 2 or 3 tracks on their new album are unbelievably good. Like, they're not sort of that proggy, but they've just got space in them. They've got thought. And I found a video of them playing live on KEXP, the Seattle station. And I assumed there were a proper big, loads of people in the band. There's 3 of them. And basically, it's 2 a bassist and a guitarist and a drummer. And the guitarist has some modular synths, sort of those things that are like a telephone exchange. But what really interests me is the guitarist doesn't do anything that heavy or that powerful. He's quite picky and quite small. All of that noise is coming from the bassist, who's also playing. So the guitarist is playing an SG and the bassist is playing a bass SG, but sort of like in a blend between how Lemmy played, and I just don't know how it's that thunderous. So I was driving back from somewhere yesterday. Rare occasions I actually borrow my wife's car and drive somewhere. So I put on the rest of the album, and after about track 4, it's just not very interesting. Just like, I was like, well, that was explained to me as a metal band thing to do, to sort of front load albums with the good tracks, and if you've got weaker ones, just to put them at the end, which I've never seen a lot of evidence for. So what's your opinion on that?
Well, I was listening to one of the classic Black Dahlia Murder albums earlier this week, Ritual, which is one of their sort of earlier classics, because they've been going around for a while now. And I don't know, I thought it was on vinyl. It was definitely on the flip side. It was definitely on side B, and the best track the most enjoyable, like, the vocalist was really on one, and it was called. It was really like. I mean, there's a certain thing you have to think about when this thing came out. So, Ritual 2011. What's the track listing? Track listing is The Grave Robber's Work. Because I've been reading about.
Does that mean they're successful, or?
Oh, it's just about like the
grave robbers work as a system. Grave robbers work.
Yeah, it's it's death metal stuff. It's very good, and he was just like he's just really. I was looking at Reddit about the singer killed himself a few years ago, and people said, like, there's this question of, like, he was a force of personality on, much like they sort of reminisced in a way, like they're similar to the Power Trip guy. He was like a really good, very sort of healthy person for the music scene, the death metal music scene. He was like a champion of death, a real sort of variety of death metal things. And people said actually he put so much effort into his lyrics. He really did. He like the whole stories in them, and even if you can't understand like a word when he's singing, you can actually track it reading the lyric. Anyway, point is that's the end of the album. That's the fourth from last track. So no, it's not true at all. I think it may have been true to an extent, maybe in the 80s when you were designing a vinyl track listing. But these days, that is irrelevant, and certainly, I always thought CDs worked more like, and this is not genre specific, but more like you open with a few big ones, you dull it out, not dull it out, but you then fill it in a little bit, and then like track 6, track 7, you pick it up again. So you have this sort of.
Yeah, it's the same, that sort of format. I can see how it changed. We did an episode about this. We've been going long enough with Beat Motel now to have covered some ground before. And like the Perfect Album thing, a part of that was the Perfect Album on vinyl was, heavy opener, fairly full on first side, and then something a bit odd, like Sing on the end of the A side for the Blur's first album. And then the B side, big opener, that's when you then put your quiet ones in, then you have the massive ending. Cool.
Yeah.
Right. Sorry. As ever, we're a quarter of the way through the podcast. I haven't even talked about the theme yet. So this is, you're right when you say it's close to home. It's a challenging theme. We decided to do a podcast about just one album, focusing on one album. And it's the last album by The Replacements, or is it? And I'll explain that at some point later on.
It's called All Shook Out.
We're so good with details. It's called All Shook Down.
Shook Down.
It's All Shook Down. And the titles are classic Replacements. You know, Paul Westerberg, the singer, classic flipperoo thing, because instead of it being all shook up, it's all shook down. And I adore The Replacements. They are easily in my top 10 most favourite bands ever. And if you've not heard The Replacements, I'm going to interchange between calling them the Mats and calling them the Replacements, because like the Mats is like the nickname, affectionate nickname for them. If you've not heard them before, this episode is not going to be a good representation of what they sound like at all. I mean, without giving anything away. And they're one of those bands, they start off basically mimicking Black Flag with their first EP, long EP. And then the first proper album is still quite Black Flag, but there's some real sort of strong storytelling and strong songwriting starting to shine through.
Well, that was Sorry Ma Forgot to Take Out the Trash. To me, was
the first one.
It's the first one, and it has, frankly, I've listened to it a bunch of times. I like it. It has one amazing song. The rest of it's a bit filler.
Which one do you think is the amazing song?
I'm in Love.
Yeah, no, I'd go with that. I don't think it's the only.
Which is called "I'm in Trouble," actually, because that's.
Actually, I knew what you meant. And then the lovely thing about discovering a band like the Replacements is their trajectory is reasonably steep throughout their 10-year career. So each album you get is a clear progression. You can really sort of hear the band developing. But I've never listened to the last album, which is All Shook Down. And part of that originally was that I didn't want there to be nothing left to discover. You know, they're a band that haven't existed since 1990. So I didn't want to get to the point where there's nothing new. But increasingly over the years, I mean, I'm talking about like possibly 20 years I've been into the Replacements and have deliberately not listened to this album. And over those 20 years, I increasingly was put off listening to the album by learning more about it and people's opinions of it. So we partly decided to do this as well because Simon in my band said he can't tell the difference between late era Bon Jovi and the Replacements. And I mean, this album does not prove him right in the fucking slightest. It really doesn't. Perhaps the couple before, but so we decided to challenge ourselves. So Sam, you know, what's your take on this?
Well, I think it's a really interesting one to do. I sort of chose this because I thought you had listened to it, but your opinion of it has been. I think that Bon Jovi comment has pissed for previously. We got into a discussion of we might do a few of these album reviews where we go through an album that has been ruined for us in a way, either before we listen to it or after we've listened to it, and we can really struggle going back to it and enjoying it, innocently. The one thing I listened to this album in a couple of times, a couple of ways, and one of the things I figured out is that it's not a headphone album whatsoever by any stretch of the imagination. It is a speakers album. You play it through the speakers, it sounds good through the speakers. It sounds shit through Bluetooth headphones.
I've only listened to it on speakers here at the office, which are huge, bassy, massive things, and the speakers in my home studio, which is, well, they're not monitors, but they're close to monitors. You know, they're still fairly bass response, but quite neutral, deliberately neutral, because that's you need that if you're going to mix music. And the production, I think, was really, really strange. Should we play a song and then start pulling it apart? Okay, so this is the first song, and unusually for this podcast, I'm going to tell you what the song's called before. I'm not sure it really matters. So this song is One Wink at a Time, and this is Sam's first choice.
Wait in a hurry to put an end to this day. exercise him 1 wink at a time. 1 wink at a time.
I love that.
I chose this one because I liked it. This one.
Ah,
what do you think of it?
Cool. There's something about Westerberg, the singer's performance, that has actually warmed on me. I mean, at first I did struggle to get through the album.
Yeah.
I've not managed to do it in one sitting for various reasons. Some of them being that I know let's not dwell on my vagaries yet. But there are bits that have grown on me, and his delivery on that has grown on me, and it's not traditional Replacements at all. It is something else.
The thing is that, so one of the things that we have to address is, of course, and this is probably quite early on to bring this in, but it's an elephant in the room that you sort of hinted at earlier, is that this album, he did not write. Westerberg was the songwriter of the Replacements. He didn't write everything, but he wrote the vast majority.
A lot of what Christopher Mars, the drummer, wrote some, but not much.
Yeah, and so Westerberg wrote the vast majority. And the thing is that when you write, so they didn't think that this was going to be all the band members of the Replacement play on the album. What they play on the album, no one knows because they haven't actually recorded them.
They don't remember now, apparently.
And what's the other thing? One of the key things is also he probably didn't write this album as a Replacements album, therefore.
He absolutely didn't. It was meant to be. The Replacements had kind of fallen apart. Yeah. And it was meant to be a Paul Westerberg solo album.
This is a really key thing, is that I think you can hear, and the whole album is sort of the structure of the album. The album is underpinned by his acoustic guitar. The whole album, so it's a very sonically, it's very different from all the Replacement stuff, and there's an aspect of, but then therefore sort of like the Replacements-ishness seems to be a bit forced into it.
It does. I mean, so just sort of the background to the album and the band, they started off as a fairly ratty punk band and released great albums on their local label, they're Cincinnati, they're Minneapolis, I forget which. And
Twin Tone.
Twin Tone. Then they signed to Sire, and they put out an album. Bobby Stinson. So that lineup: Bobby Stinson on guitar, Tommy Stinson, his little brother, and it really was little early pictures of the Replacements. Tommy's something like 15 in the band. Paul Westerberg, singer, and Christopher Mars, drummer. Bob Stinson just about made it through that first album before his heroin addiction was so cripply. Just they couldn't have him in the band anymore. The next album and the next album was a case of a major label basically trying to get a radio hit, trying to get a radio-friendly unit shifter, which
what album
they just failed at.
So what album are you talking about there?
Which one?
The radio-friendly unit shifter.
Don't Tell a Soul, which is the one before this.
Because that's their third Sire album. So Tim, which is a bona fide classic.
That's like last original lineup.
Yeah. And then they release next album is Pleased to Meet Me, which is probably the last great Replacements album.
That's the last one that has. So Bob had probably hoofed out, which must have made for awkward Christmas dinners and stuff with his family. But that album, Pleased to Meet Me, is just the three. I didn't know that until researching for this. It's just Westerberg, Stinson, and Christopher Mars. At that point, Christopher Mars was still at least bringing songs to the band.
Yeah.
And it was during the preparation for the next album that Christopher Mars brought songs to Westerberg, and Westerberg just dismissed them out of hand. They just went, no, not even going to listen to him. So Christopher Mars basically went, well, fuck you, and quit.
So I think they thought they had some radio ones, like Alex Chilton is an incredible song.
Oh God, but that's real. It's the right time, right place, right sound. It's power pop, isn't it? It's so perfectly of its time. And we ought to talk about their peers at the time. Well, Husker Du, who they kind of fell out with, on a much earlier album, Kids Don't Follow. The bit at the beginning where this is the Minneapolis police, the party's over, and someone goes, "Fuck you, man." That's the singer of Husker Du. So that they were friends. But REM, they were absolute arm in arm with REM for the alternative rock thing, and they were expected. They were expected to be massive. They signed to a major before Husker Du did.
But they also had that thing of like they weren't. I think I've read the book and I couldn't find my copy of
the Trouble Boys.
The Trouble Boys book, which is a really, really good book. It's exhaustive. It's like in its detail. And I couldn't find my copy, so I couldn't go back over that chapter about the last album. But
I don't know if I've read it.
Shut up, phone. It was. So I'm looking at the track listing of "Pleased to Meet Me," and tracks stand out, and I can sing the choruses without hearing stuff.
Which ones? I'd love to know.
I think one of some of the greatest backing vocals ever are on "I Don't Know," and then of course there's "Can Hardly Wait," "Can't Hardly Wait."
That's actually a really good example of a major label trying to get a radio friendly unit shifter, because
it's a great song.
It's a fantastic song, but the orchestration on it is completely unnecessary. Back in the days of Napster, I had a acoustic, really bad quality copy, a version of that song that was just Paul Westerberg and acoustic guitar, like a demo, and the song still stands up. It's a good song. It doesn't need that silly. It's like the drums on Bridge Over Troubled Water. It just doesn't need to be there.
I mean, I guess in a way, I guess it's sort of quite an interesting thing, because it's basically they were one of the first, I guess, major label signings from the US underground in the 1980s, which is a really buzzing place,
like college radio scene.
Yeah, in terms, and really inventive, and it didn't just give birth to things like radio-friendly sort of REM and stuff like that. It also was the Pixies. It was also the Replacements. Also Husker Du. It was also Firehose, who I love as well. And,
I need to listen to Firehose and Husker Du. To be fair, I watched a brilliant documentary about them on YouTube and kind of went, "Oh wow!" I didn't realize how influential they are.
Oh, I've tried to listen to them. They've never hit for me, clicked, Yeah, well, I mean, this is the thing that these two albums miss. The last two albums miss is the pop, the power pop songs that actually Paul Westerberg's really brilliant at.
I think you're right. I think it's almost like he's trying to be too grown up, but also he was not a well man. Him and Tommy had got into smoking speedballs, so heroin and cocaine mixed together, and he was a full-blown alcoholic by this point.
Yeah, so that's the other thing that you need to discuss about you need to keep in mind with the Replacements when you listen to them, is that they were, I wouldn't say nihilistic, I would just say they actively they had this antagonistic aspect of the punk scene, the thing that probably attracted them to the concept of punk in some ways, which I don't think they ever really were that attracted to, was just sort of the sort of very unhealthy disregard for their own safety and health and
their own everything. I mean, I did a talk on the Replacements a couple of years ago. And when you start to look into the story of the Replacements, at the time, I always assumed they were willfully self-destructive. I mean, the opportunities they blew are their trajectory. They should have been the biggest band in the world, or at least up there with REM and whatever. But I'm not convinced now, having put some space between reading about them, falling in love with them, and you know, that sort of initial honeymoon period you get with bands. I'm no longer convinced it was willful. I think they perhaps just didn't understand the game rather than willfully ruining it. And I think if they had got massive, they would have gone the same way as Nirvana, quite likely. So, like the first example, they played on Saturday Night Live, and that's a big deal in the States. You know, that is one of your stepping stones to becoming a megastar. And when it comes to the guitar solo in the song, Bobby, the guitarist, had been fucking up the guitar solo, or like forgetting to play it, or just something really stupid. So when it gets to that part of the song, this is on live national TV. Paul Westerberg leans back from the microphone a bit, turns to Bobby and goes, "Come on, you fucker!" And it's like in America at that time, that's just death. That you're done. You don't get a second chance. It's just, but there are so many stories, and I don't want this to be a Replacements wacky story thing. But another good example is Tom Petty hired them to be the support on a massive tour, and they got kicked off. And I think the first date they got kicked off the tour. Do you know this story?
I can't remember it.
They got kicked off the tour because they went on stage and they were wearing Tom Petty's wife's clothes. They'd raided his dressing room and her wardrobe and went on stage wearing her clothes. And Tom Petty, quite rightly, would be like, "What the fuck are you doing?" And it's that every time they were given a chance, they just seemed to just norks it up in quite spectacular ways. But I say there's loads of stories about it. We ought to have another song. So I'm going to go with my first choice, which is Merry Go Round.
Trouble down, here's your heart pound, and your feet so good about the ground. Merry go round in dreams, write some down. It seems.
So that's Merry Go.
Great lead guitar in that.
That lead guitar is someone we haven't talked about yet. So poor bugger only officially joined the band before this recording. This guy called Slim Dunlap, and typical Replacement story. They recorded the album that only had the three of them on, and they were sat in a bar deciding whether to carry on or not. And Paul Westerberg said, "Look, we need another guitarist again, and we'll hire the first person who walks through that door." And allegedly, Slim Dunlap walked in, but I don't believe that at all, because he was already a competent and well-known country guitarist, and his guitar playing on this album, you can really, really hear when it's him and not Westerberg, and it's fucking brilliant. Yeah. Really lovely, really just great guitar, and it's one of the saving graces of the album, I think.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I like the horns. I mean, in the last track, and I think there are decent. This is what I mean by retrofitting the Replacements in. There are things that the Replacements did that are brilliant that they sort of shoved in to what sounds like was recorded, and then sort of they went, actually, let's market this as a replacement, and they sort of retrofitted all these things, because the drums really don't add. The drums really sort of feel a bit forced on a lot of the time, and then Paul Westerberg's delivery sounds like he's whispering into the microphone a lot of the time, and I find it quite grating in a way that I've never thought he was an amazing singer. But I always thought he finds his way through, and actually his sort of slightly slurry delivery works really well in a lot of stuff, and it's almost like he's a bit too self-conscious of what he's doing, and
that's what I mean. He's trying to be too grown up.
Yeah,
or he was just drunk. I mean, in my notes it says Westerberg just sounds drunk.
He absolutely does. Probably was. And also there's some merry-go-round. I was listening to that going, yeah, this is sort of like them trying to do, this is sort of the closest to a classic. The first two tracks are almost the closest to like classic Replacements that you get on the album. And they're the best two songs probably, in my opinion. And But there's also this point where you can hear some effects on Paul Westerberg's voice, and it just sort of went. They'd never do that when they were full on.
I think there's a lot of trying to repair stuff on this album. You mentioned before that they don't really know who played on what. There's only one track that's got all three, has definitely got the whole band on. I've got it in my notes, but I'll come to that later. But I read one, because this album had its 30th birthday 4 years ago. So there's a bunch of articles out there where people sort of looking back on it again. And that did colour my opinion of it in some ways. But one of them basically said, surprised that Westerberg, they were surprised that him and Stinson actually survived the recording. So there's reports of Westerberg like being so hungover or drunk that he couldn't stand in front of the microphone, so he had to lay on the floor on his back and do it like real close mic. And you can really hear that on some of the delivery. I think you're right, it is grating. It's so unkind of me to say that. I'm not him. I'm not in his situation. I did not have his life. But I can say, as an opinion, that it's frustrating. It's frustrating me. He's lost that. There's sort of an anger, and as you say, an antagonistic edge to his vocals in a lot of the stuff.
I mean, go back to that song that I don't know. The backing vocals, they're such a good song, and basically the whole song is what's it? The backing vocals are just like the rest of the band going, I don't know. Whilst Paul Westerberg is sort of going, should we give up? I don't know. Should we actually try and make a good record? I don't know. It's such a good concept, and it's such a good example of actually what the charm of the Replacements was, is because they were this great pop band who had this great sort of pop, power pop rock band who had this like line of poetry and humor, and you never were sure when they were being heartfelt and when they were being a joke, and they unsettle you as a listener. Those lyrics unsettle you as a listener because you're going, I'm not sure where you're actually standing with this.
They are undoubtedly an incredibly influential band, and they influence. You and I almost definitely got into a lot of bands without knowing they were influenced by the Replacements, then discovered the Replacements. I mean, Against Me, classic example. And there's quite a few points in this. You
thought at one point Laura Jane, the Against Me, were trying to do the same, trying to aim at the same trajectory as the Replacements at one point. I think
I did, when I thought they were trying to burn for their second major label album. I thought the Replacements were trying to burn themselves in a similar way, as I think Beastie Boys did, as I think Nirvana tried to with In Utero. But there is just talking now, there is a Replacement song that is a similar kind of should we carry on story. It's I can't remember what it's called, but it's give the money back to the record label, fire the agent, fire the manager.
Oh yeah.
So it's a similar kind of thing, but we ought to have.
Well, yeah, I mean, Against Me have a load of tracks which are sort of like them going, where the fuck are we now? Which always sort of, I always loved those ones because it's just it treated the audience with some intelligence.
Yeah, like they're so brutally honest, like Treatment Bound. I mean, first of all, just what a name for a song. And that is them just describing the chaos of them being on tour in a really sloppy way. There's like you hear someone drop a bottle, kind of when Bobby Stinson goes to start the guitar solo, someone drops a bottle and he fucks up his solo, and Paul Westerberg just goes, "You fucked that up." Just like I like how it's kind of warts and all, but that was in danger of becoming a bit pantomime, I think. And it slightly irked me that the video for Merry Go Round, because they were very anti-video, so they got given money by Sire, and they spent the money and just gave Sire a video that was just a speaker playing, a record player playing the song, like really dumb stuff. At the beginning of this video, Westerberg's just looks so bored, but it's almost now become a bit pantomime. So as the song's starting, he's literally arms by his side, just staring at the camera. The song starts and Tommy turns and just yawns, and it's just like, yeah, we get it. Okay, we get it. fine, we get it. And yet, one of the other videos I found out they won an MTV award for best video, which is coming some way from on Let It Be. They've got Saw Your Video, which is just ripping the shit out of any band that will make a video. And the whole point of that song, there's no vocals for the first half of the song. It's like the most MTV unfriendly thing that they could possibly release. So to go from that to winning an award and sort of becoming a part of that, my friend Wolfie, who he reckons that was Westerberg in desperation, basically realizing that he'd fucked up and realizing at this last album stage that he'd just burned bridges and just basically ruined his chance of ever actually making enough money to live on from music. Should we have another song? So this is Sam's next choice, and it is Attitude. I think this is the only one that all four played on. Here we go. Oh God, where's it gone? Hang on. Merry-Go-Round, then Attitude. Oh shit! I'll just have to find it. Hang on. I couldn't figure out there was an extra slot when I was putting all the music on. I was like, oh, look at that! Right, so I'm going to have to. I'm going to have to actually upload it now. Come on. Oh, thank goodness for that. I did actually clip it. I just didn't add it to the software.
Remember sitting back in school, I held my tongue until it turned blue. You say they hated
What?
Yeah, the Attitude sort of makes you think they were trying to do a reply song to the Misfits song Attitude.
I don't know that song, but I like the concept.
But I don't mind the lead guitar there, but yeah, I don't know what to say. It's just sort of the sound of a band that can't really be fucked to, you know. And I think there's this thing you said earlier. So there's a point where them not giving a fuck has a charm, and then there's a point where you sort of go, I don't want you to not give a fuck, but I also want you to have some self-awareness in that not giving a fuck.
That's what I mean. Just like we get it.
Yeah.
One of my notes, I put that it's really interesting. I love doing things like this with you because you always give me a perspective I haven't seen, but sort of fits in with what I have observed. So there's some real classic Matt stuff on this that I'm now really skeptical about. Like a lot of the songs have Westerberg, like, should we start? Well, that's not what he says, but 1, 2, 3. That's sort of the mumbled intro thing, which is very Replacements, but it's also a bit like, did you have a SodaStream when you were a kid?
Oh, I know what they are.
Yeah. So SodaStream, you'd get like the concentrates of like Coca-Cola or whatever, or Fanta, but they weren't. They were like the SodaStream version, and they were always too intense. They'd like got the Coca-Cola flavor and just made it too high, just so it sort of came across as artificial. And that, you're absolutely right. I think that might be the most damning thing about that we've said about the whole album, and it's so fucking accurate. It's a Westerberg album. It was his management, apparently, who said, no, let's call it a Replacements album. He had the band was dead.
And maybe this is the tragedy again of the band, which is all the sort of situation of like, and it's right band, wrong time in a way. Is that they could have sort of had so much more sort of financial success than they ever did, and then when they clicked that they needed to take it seriously, I think it was sort of the point where they also were completely sick of one another.
It was just too late. And I mean, like NoFX, now there are a few parallels between NoFX. So NoFX, well, Fat Mike is the only one we can claim this for, always took the piss out of bands who took it too seriously and looked after themselves and ate right and exercised, and then completely fucking fell apart. and I don't know if I wouldn't call Fat Mike straight edge, but I know he has basically cleaned himself up.
I think to a great extent, yeah.
Because you get to the point where you can't live that way. You cannot keep living that way. No human being can. And I think the Replacements, a similar kind of thing, just got to the point where you took the piss out of people for so long, and then realised why other people were actually looking after themselves.
I think I read somewhere that Metallica now have a chef that flies with them to design their diets whilst they're on tour.
Cool.
And it's all vegan. It's all, you know.
Yeah, so this isn't a diet thing, but no, let's move on. Right, so let's crack on with the next one, and the next one is Sadly Beautiful. I've got there's two versions. Oh, here we go.
Sadly your horn to a face that
I think a lot of the time the best stuff on the album is probably, you know, Jim's lead guitar.
Yeah. I think you're absolutely right. I wondered when I first heard this album, which is obviously just a few days ago, I did wonder if Westerberg was trying to make a country album, because it's so overt. There are so many, I wouldn't call them memes, but there are so many flavors that I would associate with country, and that, yeah, the pedal steel or whatever it is, slide guitar, is so country, and I like it. It's nice. But the reason I chose that track is that I love that viola solo, you know, the viola part.
Oh, yeah.
I did actually have to look up to see if it was a viola or a cello, because I thought it could have been like a, you know, cello on high notes. And what really surprised me is learning who played it. Do you know who played that viola?
This is on the Wikipedia's, isn't it? This is what's his face from?
It's John Cale from Velvet Underground.
That's it.
And that's remarkable. That's absolutely incredible. That's like going, oh yeah, you know, the new Rolling Stones album's got oh shit, my brain's falling apart. It's got Bon Jovi playing. No, it's not. It's nothing like that. Fucking idiot. But that song is, I chose that because quite a lot of the album is quite sad. I think I read a lovely thing this morning when I was doing research for this, saying that Replacements, and especially Westerberg, if you look at their entire career, it's all about missed opportunities and longing. But they turn longing. They are connoisseurs of longing for things, and that, I thought, that's really accurate. That comes through the entire career of the Replacements. It's this sort of pining for something that's just not there, without being maudlin or without sort of, it's just like a, oh fuck it kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, I was just something you said just made me think about this album. That in a way, well, let's play the last thing, because we'll talk about the conclusion after.
Okay, well, we've got another three. So this is your next choice, which is My Little Problem. It's really not a headphones album recording this now. That production's horrible. It actually kind of was almost actually uncomfortable.
Yeah, and her voice does not gel with his voice.
It just doesn't horrible. Add anything at all.
Again, it just sort of felt a bit, that feels pantomime. That feels like, but I wanted to say that, I wanted to sort of, are you glad the album's out there, or do you think it's a shame that they put it together and they polished it together?
I definitely think it's a shame they tried to make it a replacements album, because it just ain't. It's just not. There are so many different people involved in it, and I refuse to believe that Tommy Stinson, Christopher Mars, and Paul Westerberg cannot remember who played on what. That just doesn't happen. I'm even
the drum sound on the album, the entire album. I mean, what I'm surprised by this is that it's not. I don't think it's a bad album. Like, the songs aren't bad. It's the production and the agreement to release it with that sound. That, to me, is the most surprising thing. Is that, okay? It's not a headphone album, and it jars even more on the headphones. It still doesn't sound great on speakers, though.
It's such an odd thing. We're going to run way over, so I'm going to move on to the next thing. I'm just going to say that song again. It sounds like them trying to do something from 3 albums before, just doing like the straight up rock, and they do it well. I mean, the cover of Black Diamond by Kiss is from Let It Be is great. You know, I didn't know it was a Kiss song for a long time. And then I heard the Kiss version, I went, yeah, it's horrible.
Yeah.
It'd be like if you'd only ever had cheap supermarket Coca-Cola and then you had real Coke. You'd be like, what is this? No, it's not like that. Oh, shut up. Right. That's my last analogy. I'm not going to do that anymore. No more analogies. So my next choice is but bent out of shape.
Oh, did you popcorn for dinner? Last night it was cheesecake. A little sleepy time tea, spiked with another heartache. Oh, I smell your hair, your clothes I
wear. Smell your hair. What? I chose that because that's one of several songs on the album that when it starts, you're like, yes, we're back. This is going to be a proper good replacement song, even down to the lyrics. Like, was it? I live on popcorn last night. I ate cheesecake. Like typical kind of nonsense Westerberg lyrics when he can be so artistic and such a poet, but at the same time have these moments of absolute nonsense. And then the song just sort of loses its direction and it's just a bit vague.
I also have to say, I think that lead guitar sound is shit.
It relies all on just going, it's almost kind of more percussive, isn't it? It's just a bad sound. It's that sort of like chorusy.
It sounds like a cheap. It sounds like they got the cheapest fuzz pedal they could find and just shoved that on and went, "Oh, that'll do."
That'll do.
And I don't know. I like. This is a bit unfair because this is sort of a. Is this sort of a mean podcast? Because basically we're picking up the worst thing they did together as a band, but at the same time, in a way, it's sort of quite apt. It's a very replacements thing to do. Make an album which is so shambolic as your last one that is literally the doesn't sound cohesive. It sounds like there's several. It sounds like there's several albums there in this at once, and actually in that way, I feel like the Replacements are a band that were marred by tragedy, and in that way, it's quite poetic that actually the sort of life follows art.
Bizarrely, the album did very, very well.
It's got good reviews.
Yeah, Rolling Stone said it was hot 100 of the year. It was number 3. So they're saying this is one of the best albums released around the world this year. But it was too little, too late, basically. And
this is 1991. This is the same year where you get Nevermind.
How the hell was it up there with? You're right. Yeah, how was it up there with Nevermind?
This is the Metallica Black Album. This is
how is it number 3? Had those people not heard anything else the Replacements had done?
Well, maybe, I genuinely
don't get why it was liked.
Sometimes you get in these award shows these people who are given albums. They're given awards for pieces of work which aren't as good as the stuff they used to put out, but you give them because you sort of go, they haven't been given their dues, and we need to give them their dues.
And any industry awards, like the Brit Awards, are complete shit in the UK. They are conjured up to push records in the slump after Christmas.
Yeah, 1991, Use Your Illusion 1, Sailing the Seas of Cheese.
On. I'm not a Guns N' Roses fan, but you cannot say that Replacements album is better than Use Your Illusion. I mean, just
or even Primus' Sailing the Seas of Cheese.
I think it might beat Primus.
Sepultura, Arise.
Rolling Stone, what the fuck were you thinking? I mean, just
Green
really.
Mind by Dinosaur Jr. A low end theory. The low end theory by Tribe Called Quest. Do the Soul is Dead.
I would fight on a hill. I don't know why it's got to be hill. That Tribe Called Quest album is one of the best albums ever made since somebody first wandered in and started making noises in front of a microphone. There's no way the Replacements is better than that. But then this is the whole point of music commentary, which is what we are.
I wish my brother George was here, by Del the Funky Homo Sapien. Superchunk, No Pocky for Kitty. The KLF, it's a good year for music.
And the Replacements put out Would you call it a bad album? I actually stopped myself then.
I wouldn't call it a bad album. I think I don't think there's such a thing as a bad album. It's just that I think what happens with things like this, it's that thing of like, I was talking to my friend, my darling friend, Al the other day, because he listened to us talking about Metallica, and we sort of challenged each other to listen to the Load and Reload albums by Metallica. And I think I felt at the time, I think he felt at the time, that it's like, the albums are not bad albums. They are soiled by being put in the same category as the first few Metallica albums.
Soiled.
Because, I like them. I think the opening tracks actually of Load are particularly good. It was a 2x4 and Ain't My Bitch. They're dumb pieces of music, but they're fucking good fun to listen to. And there's a really nice turnaround thrash riff in Ain't My Bitch in the chorus. And but the fact is that they cannot live up to the memory of that album. So is this a replacement album a bad album? No. Is it a bad replacement album? Yes.
I can absolutely say that. In the rankings, it's the bottom.
Yeah, but is it a bad album? No, it's not a bad album. It is, because there's I wouldn't think everybody who gave them a good review was being dishonest in giving them a good review for that album. And I think there are things that certain people may sort of, might have done with the same sort of aspect of going, oh, this Replacement's out, it's a new band, because it's probably their biggest selling album as well. If it's
everything we're commenting on is in hindsight and in the context of knowing quite a lot about the operation of the band and the people, because we do now, because there's the internet and that stuff's kind of out there. At the time, with the context of Sire just sending you, hey, here's the new Replacements album, and then the PR person from Sire ringing you up and go, have you listened to it? What do you think? Yeah, it's great, isn't it? You go, okay, well, they're doing something different here. It's strange. It's definitely the Replacements. Okay, here's the review. Because that would have been all they had. They wouldn't have this kind of, well, they booted out, Bobby, and of course Westerberg was doing speedballs. They wouldn't have any of that at all.
No, and
possibly
I doubt a lot of those mainstream music journalists were invested in the underground in the same way that, say, you and I are, even the concept of it.
So it's our fault we think it's bad?
I think it's not our fault. I think it's the set of relations that create the feeling of sort of, it's just, but it's also that thing of like, when I first listened to, when Against Me, again, this is a good reference of when Against Me started getting, signed to Sire and they got bigger. it just felt like they're not my band anymore. And I'm okay with that. They're still a great band. And now I listen to New Wave, and I think it's actually one of the best albums they did now. I think at the time I thought it didn't stand up to the first 3 albums.
Punk rock ruined my life.
And I think that like there's going to be people who grew up with All Shook Over, and they're going to have really fond memories of it and really like some tracks and so on and so forth. And
I don't want us to put people off listening to it.
No, I think there's some very good stuff on it. I just think like it just does not stand up for me to the rest of the catalogue. But I found the Replacements I've never found them the most instantaneous band. I found every single album of theirs, I found it took multiple listens to enjoy.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. Will you listen to this again?
The thing I would, in a way, argue is that what it misses is that hook song, the song that makes you return to it, the song like "I'm in Trouble," which makes you return to that album. Like I don't know, that makes you, or Alex Chilton, that's something that lodges in your head. And Merry Go Round has that to an extent, but it's the first track. And so it's almost like that reason to go back to it is being blown. I remember getting into one of their, what was it, Tim? I think it's Tim. Was it On the Bus? That song just lodged in my head, and I had to go back to that album and listen to it. And so eventually everything else in it, I warmed up to everything else in it. Before that, it took me a while to become a Replacements fan.
I think you've absolutely played a blinder in this episode, Sam. You've really, really been really expressive and succinct. And yeah, I think you're right. There's not enough. There's not enough. I will listen to it, because some of them, the more I listen to it, it did warm to me. But there's some bits in the album. There was a track I was listening to again last night in the car. Emma got in the car. My wife got in the car, and she immediately turned the radio right down. It really annoys me when she does that. She turned the stereo almost right down, and I literally went, I don't care, and switched it off. That sort of ambivalence, because the song, it sounded like fucking Randy Newman. It sounded like Randy Newman was drunk.
But the thing is that the first time I listened to it, for this podcast, I listened to it on headphones, and I went, that was a mistake. And then I put it on at home on my stereo system, and I went, this sounds, I really don't, this actually got, it really doesn't sound bad. And I think, but there are points of it that are grating. The song Attitude is a grating song. The duet with the woman is grating. And they didn't have those grating moments. I find them grating, but they didn't have those moments in those first 5 albums.
There's nothing on any other album that I would automatically skip. Yeah. But there absolutely is on this when I listen back through to it. Have we had your last one, Sadly Beautiful, or did we just?
No, you had your Sadly Beautiful.
Okay, well, this is your Sadly Beautiful.
Had no chance at all to watch you grow up so sadly beautiful, up so sadly beautiful.
And you know what? Actually, I don't think it's a bad song. I went from it's not great, and I think it could have been on another Replacements album, and it would have been fine. But that album just needs more than it needs more. than what it has.
Yeah.
You know, it's weird that this idea that they were trying to push it as sort of this big, it's the only album in a way that I think there's no singles on it.
Yeah. But you can say the same for Led Zeppelin. They didn't do singles though, so it's a different reason. It's produced by Scott. It's produced by Scott Litt, who I don't know. I've just looked to see who else he produced. Right, he produced Green and Out of Time for REM, which are amazing albums, and he produced the MTV Unplugged for New York. And well, he mixed All Apologies and Heart Shaped Box by Nirvana. It's weird hearing my daughter listen to Heart Shaped Box. I was like, I must never tell her what it's about. He produced Counting Crows, Indigo Girls, and Patti Smith. So he was a big name. He was a big name producer. He must have had a challenging time with this album. But the sessions just dragged on. Apparently,
yeah. Maybe this is this is what we got. How's I want your daughter to pick an episode for us.
That's a good idea. Right, let's have. I'm going to play the title track, All Shook Down.
We're all shook down, all shook down.
Is that a recorder?
All shook down, shook down. Praises they sing, a register rings, one of the time.
It's I had to look it up because I thought, is that a fucking ocarina? And there's I've my notes. One of my other notes, I can't remember which song. I've just put banjos, fucking banjos. Banjos. That is an ocarina. Again, played by John Cale. I mean, why?
He was obviously having a good time. At least
He's a mad lad, wasn't he? Oh man, but I just put it on just because that ocarina was there's several moments in this album where I just sort of sat upright and went, what the fuck? It's just
but again, that's like a good thing in a Replacements album. It's a very replacement-y thing to do.
Absolutely is. I did mean to get my ocarina out before this recording.
Not in public, Andrew.
But I haven't got a long enough headphone lead to go get it out. Right, so that's all the choices, Sam, and I think we've covered it fairly well.
Conclusion: is this a Replacements album?
No, it's not a Replacements album.
I'm going to go yes. I think it's actually.
Really? Okay.
I think it's a. I would have loved there to be more songs that I clicked with, but I also think that the haphazardness and the shoddy sort of sound and the sort of the falling apartness of it sort of is quite apt and poetic for the last of the Replacements.
I would like to judge. I'd like to strike my previous comment from the record. It is a Replacements album. We're talking about there's so many people involved in this album that it's bizarre. Although the Wikipedia page, there's a list of all the people who are credited, and which includes Abraham Lincoln, which I also thought was very, very Replacements to have something that stupid on the Wikipedia page. I figured that after all this, we would need a palate cleanser, and we'd need something that would just probably cheer us up a bit. So I'm going to risk the ire. The IRE. How do you say that? I'm going to risk the rage of Sire, and I'm going to play more than 30 seconds, but not by much, of this.
Yeah, I hear, I think, I know. I don't give a shit now. You're my favorite thing. You're my favorite thing. I'm nothing. What goes on?
Granddad's favourite thing off possibly my favourite Replacements album, Let It Be. And I wanted to choose a song that was everything that All Shook Down is not. And I think that song, God, the fire and the energy in it, it's not shouty, it's not punky, it's not angry, but the enthusiasm, like Westerberg coming out of the chorus, it's just like, what is that noise? It is just like, all my emotions are pouring out of me all at once. It's just like, and it's lovely little tricks in it, and that bass sound is just wonderful, and it's got thought put into it.
There's drum fills on I don't think there's a drum fill on the whole of All Shook Out. All Shook Down.
All Shook Out. Oh dear, more than 3 shakes and it's playing with yourself.
Well, I think that may be what it was in the end.
Oh man, but yeah, so that I just wanted to hear like good Replacements.
It does make me want to go back. I haven't listened to Replacements for a while, partly just because you don't go back to stuff as much as maybe you should. But this has made me want to go back and listen to those albums. There's always it's nice. The catalogue is so big because you feel like it's stuff you missed out on. Like
So there we go. Right. So that wraps up our. I don't think we assassinated or shook down, but we certainly were quite frank in our views around it, and we have some. No, they're not letters, but people getting in touch. And the first one I got is after our lyrics episode. A couple of days later, somebody I know who plays in a band called Ecto Peach, who I'm friends with. He sent me a message. Basically, he's like, "You had me screaming at my headphones on the train about Illin by Run DMC." And I was like, "Why? Because you agree, and it's weird." And he's like, "No, he wouldn't call me a fucking idiot because he's not that kind of person." But I think if he was that kind of person, he would have just sent me a message saying, "Andrew, you're a fucking idiot," because he was like. He could not believe. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but he could not believe how I didn't understand it and how I'd not understood it for nearly 40 years. It's just like, I thought, that's a hell of a reaction we've got from somebody. That's quite amazing. Yeah, so
it's nice to know people care.
Yeah, so sorry, Matt, if we if the transport police got involved. And the second one, which I really like, is actually an Instagram comment, and I really like that people are starting to actually, follow us on Instagram and comment on the clips. And there was one where we were talking in the last episode about music documentaries. My friend Briggs, my friend and occasional bandmate Briggs, he said, "I definitely recommend Night Flight Plus as a streaming service for music documentaries. It's basically a mix of music stuff and great cult films. It's £45 a year." So I just want to say thanks, Briggs. That sounds bloody great. Music documentary streaming service. Night Flight Plus. I must admit, I haven't looked it up, but I have the whole weekend to myself. So yeah. I may well look it up. There's another film that I've got on my list of films to see that was made in about 1982, and it was a low budget film, and the cast was all people from the New York punk scene. It's a really famous film that I now can't remember the name of, but it's I'll find it and I'll message you, Sam.
A friend of mine watched the one of the Joe Strummer drama films. It's got a great lineup of like who's who of sort of punk world. I think Iggy Pop's in it, and Jim Martian is in it, and all these other people. And he says, "It's a fucking awful piece of shit."
Oh man, I'm looking at Night Flight Plus, and it really is a mix of like, there's a Brian Eno documentary about him during 71 to 77, which looks good. Joe Strummer, Smithereens. Then you look down. Underneath that, there's Slumber Party Massacre 2, Rats, Night of Terror. It really is like schlock, like video nasties and brilliant looking. God, Murder Cycle. And brilliant looking documentaries. That's what an interesting mix of stuff. Cool.
This looks good.
It does look good. So thanks for that, Briggs. That's absolutely fantastic. Oh man, there's so many. Reagan era chaotic punk bands like The Descendants is just the line I saw just before it scrolled away, and I'm like, I want to see that. That's already something I definitely want to watch. So yeah, absolutely brilliant. Oh, and then there's a documentary I think I might have seen about Blitz, the Blitz Club, where sort of New Romantics came from, but it always makes me laugh because it's got a picture of David Bowie in just after Ziggy Stardust era, and if you leave a coffee mug on a piece of paper, it leaves a ring. It looks like someone's left a ring on Bowie's forehead. This big like circle kind of thing. So anyway, we ought to wrap it up because we are. Should we just say it's an hour and a quarter podcast and stop worrying about always overrunning?
Yeah. Right. It depends on how busy we are afterwards.
That's true. Yeah, I've not got a meeting for a little while. Okay, cool. Sam, I really, really enjoyed this. I did find it quite challenging, actually. I think I was a bit nervous about it. Just because it's sort of, no band should be sacred. But
no band should be
sacred, but the Replacements are really, really important to me. Be like if Against Me released an awful album and we had to discuss it, I'd be quite emotional, I think. I'm just going to say thanks for listening, because this is brilliant. Well, anyone who is still listening all the way to the end, for one thing, congratulations, you're a superhero and very tolerant of our nonsense. And subscribe and like and all that stuff. Sam, you got anything to add to that? Well, we're petering out like the Replacements' career, really.
Yeah. I can't remember where the phrase "kill your darlings" was from, but there you go.
Yeah, stick with that. We're writing. Yeah, that's it. I'm just literally just going to peter out.
I love you.
I love you too.